Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, there's a new blog post on the Elixirlang website that was written by Guillaume Deboc and Jose Valim. Jose had previously teased or said that we're going to be talking about some of the new work that we'd done on the type system in Elixir 119, and they've now delivered on that. So they wrote about the data structures that power Elixir's type system and some of the optimizations that went into Elixir 119 while they're working on this. So the title of the blog post is called Lazier Binary Decision Diagrams, or BDDs, for Set Theoretic Types. I know a few people out there who are really language geeks. They love digging into the language, understanding compilers and the way these things work, and they will eat this up. So as I was looking at it, the feeling that I got was oh, this is quite a bit academic. But we did want to talk about why this really matters. One of the things to point out is actually there's a lot of cutting edge research that's in this. They've actually improved upon what's in academic literature and are sharing it so other languages and other communities can benefit too. So Elixir 119 now type checks faster than 1.18 despite having more sophisticated type system features. It's kind of funny because they were working on it. They're saying, whoa, we're adding these new features. Our new type system is way too slow. And then they did a whole bunch of work on it. And that's what they're talking about in this post, what kind of work they did. And then they end up making it faster than 1.18 while adding a lot more features and adding to the whole computer science research field as well in how they were able to do some of these things.
I love the bits where we get cool stuff for faster.
And from my perspective, it's free, right? I don't have to do anything to enable this other than upgrade to 119.
Yeah, I'm sitting here on a code base that's still on 1.18. I need to go ahead and update. I usually wait until .1 or .2, and for no good reason other than just like kicking the can down the road, because I've never really had a big problem with the first, patch release or the first minor release. The SRE in me it always says, yeah, don't wait for the first shiny new thing. Wait for the bugs to be sorted out. But yeah, that's just 1.19 in general. But as far as like faster type systems, I don't have much to say other than I've been quietly like reaffirming my opinion on type systems. I don't love type systems in like my day-to-day. Mm-hmm. It just seems so arduous and tedious and noisy and whatever. And I really love the ergonomics of Elixir. Right? Ruby is the same kind of way, but I understand like the need for type systems when you get to like a bigger system with a lot of people working on it and you need stability, right? Mm-hmm. So I understand why it's there, but with this new cover your ears, I'm going to talk about AI, but with AI stuff, I got to have a bit more safety around. And so I am really enjoying so far, and I know that we're not done with this, but I'm really enjoying the direction that Elixir is taking with type safety so that it can help me out, but maybe even more so get these dang agents to be able to compile something that makes sense without, leaving vibe coded bugs all in its wake, So the fact that it's got a tight feedback loop is really helpful at the same time.
I will say when I upgraded from 118 to 119 on one particular project, I was getting new compiler warnings. And when I went and looked at them, it wasn't invalid. It didn't find here's a bug. It was more of the way you're using this, you really should have a type declaration in the pattern match on the header. Assuming within the body of the function that it is a struct and operating on it as though it is that struct. And it's saying, but you didn't actually say it was that struct in the pattern match. Mm-hmm. It was too dynamic. And so that was the first time I'd seen it do something where it's saying, the compiler is saying, I want more type specification in your code, even though it's fine. Easy changes. But it was it's like a little flavor difference. Oh, you're actually pushing to have a little bit more type declaration just in the pattern match. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to alias a lot more to get those functions heads to be shorter. Because I don't do it sometimes just because they're already kind of long. We'll see. Well, I guess speaking of all this, let's talk about Elixir 1.19.4 was quietly released. So another little patch release, and a couple of notable things in here. We've got links to all the details if you want, but it includes a couple of bug fixes. But there's a new mix xref feature. So Definitely recommend getting this one into your CI pipeline, maybe even in your pre-push Git hook might be a good idea. That's a whole side topic we can get into. I've essentially recreated my GitHub action as a pre-push.
Oh, interesting.
It's annoying sometimes because you don't always need that running the whole thing. But for these quick little ones, it's helpful.
Yeah, I am super annoyed by a CI failure just saying, oh, this extra check that you don't normally run locally had some issue.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, like the quick ones like mix format check,
Yes.
formatted, and this xref thing could be really nifty. All right, so let's talk about the xref thing. So they added a new option here in mix xref, which is min cycle label. And this is to help projects adapt to more precise graph reports in Elixir 1.19. So here's an explanation of why this could be helpful. So some enterprising folks might already be using a similar one called min cycle sizes. And so I think the understanding of how that works, what you're trying to express or what you think you're trying to express is I don't want all of these modules to be so tightly intermingled and cause compile cycles. I think that's what people intended with that. And so in previous versions, Elixir would break a large compilation cycle into several smaller ones, and therefore developers would check for that min cycle size on CI. But the issue is not the size of the cycle, because the cycle could mean several things. It could mean exports or runtime or other kinds of labels in there. But what we probably wanted was the compile cycles in there. And so this new option of min cycle label is a way that we can filter on that label parameter like compile cycles. That's as I understand it. Hopefully I got that correct and didn't just spread junk out there because it's a little complicated. That's how I understand it. It seems to be what it's there for. So all that to say is that if you are in 1.19 or you're upgrading to 1.19, maybe stick that little command into your CI pipeline to make sure that, well, not right away and then therefore have to like refactor everything in your code base if you're failing it, but maybe check that, and then if it is good, stick it in your CI pipeline so you don't regress. That will keep compile times quicker and prevent those little sneaky cycles from creeping in there. So that is 1.19.4. There's a couple other little bug fixes, and we got links to the tag release with more docs on it.
This episode is sponsored by Paraxial.io, the only security platform with true Elixir support. I sat down with founder Michael Lubis to ask this week's security question. So, if security is so important, why do companies still treat it as an afterthought?
So it's important to have a fire extinguisher in your house, but most people don't, or they don't think about it until it's too late. Because security, it's top of mind for people that do security for a living. If you're leading a startup, you have a million things going on at a company. There's always some problem that you have to prioritize. At the same time, I think also there's this misconception about the risk where it's, oh, we'll get a security incident and, you know, the data gets leaked. That's obviously very bad, but we could maybe pay a fine. We'll get through it. Now it's even worse. People don't think about this, but you get ransomwared and the whole business operation can just shut down. So it's just gotten worse in terms of consequences. And I think it's just going to keep getting worse as businesses go online even more. Why is it treated as an afterthought? Because it's not like a quarterly numbers report or a sales figure. You know, it's not that kind of thing. It's more abstract, and you're fine until the ransomware day happens. And then it's the number one problem for the company.
Reach out to Michael at Paraxial.io to get personalized security feedback for your projects and your business. That's at Paraxial.io. And next up, we just wanted to talk a little bit more about Tiobe or Tiobe or whatever, Tiobe. So we talked about it previous episode where we were talking about the dark matter developers, which is that whole set of developers usually working on Java or .NET. And there's a lot of them out there in the industry, and they're kind of invisible. You don't really know they're there. They're quiet and they're just doing their work. And so we were talking about the Tiobe index, which is a form of a popularity contest of languages. So we wanted to clarify, we got some great feedback on that discussion and helping us to better understand how the Tiobe index is really worthless. So we wanted to share some of this fun stuff. So we talked about Elixir's placement in it, and, you know, it did seem odd that it was very, you know, some of the other very popular things like TypeScript were very low. So we've got two links for you. One is a blog post that really breaks down and helps understand what is wrong with the TIOBE index and why it should not be used as a reference. And really, I think I just feel bad that we didn't know this ahead of time. We know this now. And then Jose actually shared some fun little bits from this. Really, to summarize from the post about the TIOBE index, it says that the index is fundamentally flawed because it ranks languages by the raw count of search results, not real usage or developer activity, not the number of people querying, not the number of queries they're making, not even sentiment. And so it leads to really volatile trends and absurd rankings, like Visual Basic suddenly surged in 2020, outranking JavaScript, but there was no support for that from Stack Overflow, GitHub, Google Trends, or anything like that. And that past TIOBE predictions have been really wrong, and older reports are conspicuously missing. So our apologies, didn't realize it was not that helpful of an index when we shared it. And then Jose had actually shared a fun little anecdote. He said about 5 or 6 years ago, Elixir completely disappeared from the top 100 after spending some time in the top 50. And then people reached out to Jose and said, hey, what's going on? And he reached out to TIOBE to understand why. And the reason that was given was bad presence on Amazon. So after further investigation, like on Amazon. So you can't buy Elixir on Amazon, I guess. And that's...
We haven't sold out yet.
Yeah. Jose continued, after further investigation, the root cause seemed to be that we finally had enough published Elixir books. And at the time, if you searched for XYZ programming on Amazon and only found a few results, Amazon would pad those results with non-relevant entries. However, because Elixir reached about 20 to 30 books, we were no longer padded. So we suddenly got worse rankings than every other language with only a handful of books. I mean, you really start to see like, oh, I go to some niche language, right? And 5 books come up. Amazon says, we're not going to show you a list with only 5 books. We're going to throw a whole bunch of other junk in there too. That's one of the bad experiences I have with Amazon. I'm very explicit in what I'm asking for, and they show me a whole bunch of stuff that's not that.
Yeah, I intentionally, like if I see that little sponsored little bat, nope, swipe right back. I don't, get out of here. I don't want that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then what was happening with the books is now once Elixir reached a certain threshold with like 20 to 30 books, then Amazon says, okay, well, we're only going to show you the Elixir books. And so the number of results that would come back when you search for Elixir programming books in Amazon dropped because they weren't padding it with all the stuff that wasn't Elixir. So it was really stupid. So
all those Elixir guitar strings got out of the search results, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
But that his anecdote, if all that seems to be true, is the TLDR here is just that the TIOBE research here just doesn't really seem to have a lot of depth. And I think we kind of felt that, but it's still fun to talk about because that's what statistics does. It entertains that part of your brain.
Here's a number associated with something I care about. Yeah.
Yeah. I reckon we should be more careful about that, right? Like plenty of times where that's much more serious, some headline says, some correlation, but it's not causation, and so everyone freaks out and says that, okay, I won't get into it. There's plenty of real world examples, I'm sure, that are going through your brain right now, but we'll think about that a little bit more going forward. That said, our discussion about the dark matter developers, though, I still think that rings true. Mm-hmm. Like some of the points in there, maybe not supported by the TIOBE index, but the psychology part of this of like that there's so many developers out there still that they're not shiny objects and people that are on social, they're not known, but they are the thing, they are the matter that kind of like binds stuff together, mostly invisibly, to us, the so-called the unappreciated, right, of making things work. I think that's all still very valid to talk about, but the TIOBE stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enough about TIOBE. Let's talk about LiveView, Phoenix LiveView. We haven't talked about that in a little bit. So they had a patch release 1.1.8 that had a couple of pretty good updates in there. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of, when I'm writing a Phoenix component, I typically use assign new to like put in defaults in there. And then I shift over to a live view with just like a template, like, handle params or something. And I want to do the same thing where I assign defaults in there. And it usually might depend on previous assigns, that I have put in there, either from the mount. I take that back, not from the mount. It gets a little bit weird with the mount, but with, just previous logic, I guess, of just putting other assigns in a certain order. And so I've done this multiple times. I will write assign and then give it a function and then expect the function to take the existing assign so I can operate on that to give me the new assign based on that as a computed property, right? Basically is what I'm trying to do. So there's been this like incongruent experience with a live component, not even a live component, just any component, where you basically assign new, and assign new has always taken a function that can be 0 arity or 1 arity, and the 1 arity takes your existing assigns in there, and then it merges in what you're putting in there. Versus typical handle params where you just basically never do assign new, and you always just assign stuff, and the assign function doesn't have that same signature. You can't give it a function. You just have to put in the value right in there. Well, no more. 1.18 now has made that more congruent between the two experiences. So now you can use the function assign, and then it can take a function and optionally take the existing assigns there. So you can merge in some new things based on values or some logic that you have on assigns that are already there. So such a minor little thing, but so appreciated. Another thing in Phoenix Live View is that there's a new DOM callback. Now, this is not a DOM. This is a DOM callback, so this is not a Phoenix hook callback, right? Like mounted or something. This is much more high level across the whole Live View, right? So this is a DOM callback called onDocumentPatch. Where this is helpful is that it now allows you to leverage browser's new transition APIs. And so Stefan even provides an example gist of these. He does that in the next one too that we'll talk about. So you can literally copy and paste this thing, hit Elixir, run that script, and it'll mix install, and then have you a Phoenix Live View thing with the whole example. This is great. So you're like, what does this thing do? Why do I care? Stefan gave you an example, a gleaming, shining example of what this does. I know this is usually a podcast, but I'll try to describe it for you. But the idea with View Transition APIs is that you can have existing elements on a page, and when you navigate to another page that has that same asset on there, it will transition more aesthetically pleasingly. The typical example is that you've got a list of images and you click on one of those things and you're going to the show page, right? And so your small thumbnail of an image then transitions into the big, higher resolution per se, image there, and it just looks nice. It looks like typical single page application JavaScript applications, right? It looks like that, but it's more browser oriented between requests. So very cool. All right, last thing. Again, this is a patch release, right? So this is one that you want.
They snuck a lot of new features in. Yes.
Yeah. There's a new attribute called Phoenix Viewport Overrun Target. If you do anything with infinite scrolling, where you reach to the bottom of the list and it triggers an event that you append more items to, the infinite scroll pattern. This might be interesting to you. Typically, the way that has been done is that that event is detected when the viewport moves into a certain position, something along those lines, and then it triggers the event. Well, that's a little bit difficult to do when your CSS layout is in such a way where that viewport doesn't really change. Like you've got fixed tables basically everywhere, right? Like the viewport never changes. You've got like these little sub viewports. I'll call them sub viewports. I know that's not what they are, but little spots in your layout that never really move, but they overflow in there, right? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of the classic frames back in the GeoCities days, right? Like if you got that kind of thing. The Phoenix Viewport Overrun Target now makes it easier for you to detect the scroll position within that target versus within like the whole view, the whole viewport or the whole document, for example. So TLDR, infinite scroll is easier now. So if you're doing any of those and you had a bunch of JavaScript hacks, CSS hacks to make that work well, you might go check out that new attribute and maybe that'll help you simplify some stuff. All right, that's Phoenix Live View. Highly recommend that you guys check that out and give it a good upgrade.
And next up, Live Debugger version 0.5.0 was released. And this is the folks at Software Mansion, and they describe this as their biggest release yet. So if you remember, Live Debugger is a package that you can add to your, like a dev dependency that you can add to your LiveView project. And it adds this little ability, it's like a separate endpoint where you can inspect and operate on your live views. And it's really helpful when you're trying to debug a complex live view with lots of live components and lots of state happening all over the place. And you're like, what's going on with my state changes? Well, this latest release includes some improvements around inspecting and tracking your assigns when they change. So we have a link to the Software Mansion X post where they show a little video of some of this too. And what's nice is with the new assigns, you can say what happened, like what's the diff between this event and the previous event, and it will do like a Git style diff of here's your assigns, here's what changed from the old version to the new version.
Very cool.
That is really helpful, especially when you're dealing with complex state changes and things like that. It's like, what happened? Because I'm seeing a bug now, and okay, now I can see this is the diff change. And then you can also, as you're doing those debugging sessions, you can say, I found this value in my assigns. I want to pin that. So I'm going to make that easier for me to track and see what happens as I go through these different events. So that's a neat little feature too. And then also it exposes the memory size for the live view process.
Also nice.
Making it easier to track how much memory it's using. So you can see the heap size for this process, this live view, and you realize, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't be holding this large thing in state. maybe you're doing a full list and you should be streaming results in something like that. So it makes that a little bit more visible and easy to spot. There are some other features and improvements with async loading and stream debugging. Dead live views showing recently crashed views. So it's still being able to access the state from a crashed live view as opposed to your ability to see it just like disappearing as soon as the process is gone. And then, as we mentioned, the resource usage monitoring of live view processes. So it looks like a great addition. Live Debugger, like when I need it, that is the thing I go to. So it's one of those tools that I would just add by default to a new project. Just have it available. So when you're in that moment of like, what the heck is going on, then you have this tool built in. One of the ways I found it super helpful is I stepped into a new project. It was new to me, is an existing project, and it was quite complex in terms of this live view with many dynamically loaded live components. And I'm just like, what's going on? What am I looking at right here on the page? What is this? Live Debugger made it super simple to know what was going on and the states of all these different components and everything. So yeah, great addition and appreciate that tool.
If you've used it before and it was a little bit buggy for you, Live Debugger, I don't know what changed in my circumstances. I either updated Phoenix Live View or Phoenix or Live Debugger, but I would recommend giving it another shot if you looked at it before and something wasn't quite working. I think they've worked out a lot of the. I wonder if they use Live Debugger for their for debugging their Live Debugger. All right. Next up, a new NX feature was delivered by good old friends of the show, Paolo Valente. So we've got a couple of social media posts to describe what's going on. What is NX? NX is a compile time. Compile time. How do you even describe this? It takes your Elixirs and it puts it into GPUs, and that's what NX is basically.
Numerical Elixir, yeah.
Yes, not just into your GPUs. There's other kinds of optimizations and all. It just uses other like lower level compilation things like XLA, which just targets a lot of these new chips that have tensor processors or GPUs and things like that. So that's the idea. And NX is Elixir's way of creating that kind of code to interface with those things. All right. So getting to the feature. So what did Paolo Valente do? Well, first, he delivered a lot of dad jokes that didn't land. First of all, that's Paolo Valente's signature move there. But more seriousness, what he was able to accomplish with NX is the ability to call runtime in your NX functions, right? So generally you can think of NX functions as being your compiled NX functions can only call like other compiled NX functions. And it was difficult to have those interface with your Elixir runtime functions, if that makes more sense. Hopefully that covered it.
Yeah, I think one way to describe that is the way I understand it, with numerical Elixir, it's like a def n instead of def p or regular def. So it's a special function and it's a subset of all the things you could do in Elixir are available in there.
Yeah.
So now it's saying, hey, we're going to make it a little easier for you to call back into the other functions that have more capability.
Yeah. And so what does this mean? All right. Now, if that's all it was, we'd be like, all right, cool, bro. Now it feels a little bit more normal. But all right, if you're in the NX world and you're doing a vision learning or AI learning or any kinds of like bigger modeling, things, you're going to know that a lot of that stuff has interfaces written in Python. Okay. So we already know now that there is a Python X library out there that can allow you to call Python methods in your Elixir functions, and there's a nice interface that just makes that very ergonomic for you, managed by UV. And so your def-n functions in NX can now call your Elixir functions and therefore your Python methods out there. So if you ever wanted to debug that, go for it. But the possibilities there are now unlocked. You can have your GPU enabled Elixir function call your runtime Elixir function, call your Python method, which then calls its C binding library out there, and then all the way back. And hopefully you don't get an exception anywhere in that chain. But that is an incredible unlock. And so that is a new NX feature, again, done by the brilliant genius Paulo Valente. So I'm very excited to see what this unlocks for other folks, because that could be really, really powerful. Oh, and before I forget to mention here, Paulo does say this feature about calling back into runtime functions only works for XLA compiled for the CPU now. So I know I got excited and say that you can have your GPU stuff, call into your runtime stuff, call into your Python stuff. Not exactly true quite yet, but he does say that the GPU part of this is coming soon. So, all right, we'll wait in bated breath of that coming, because that possibility is pretty cool. But for now, if you're doing CPU compilated targets here, then that will work. But hold tight for GPU stuff.
And next up, the Elixir LangChain library, which I created and maintain, version 0.4.1 was released. So this release has a number of improvements, enhancements for DeepSeek, OpenAI, and Anthropic. One of the improvements was also, so if you recall, the getText dependency for all Phoenix applications was changed from like 0.4 to 1.0. But there was no code change between them. It was something like, I don't remember exact version numbers, but it was like, there was no code change. So the LangChain library was updated to relax that getText dependency so that it works with both of them. So if that was an issue for you and being able to use the LangChain library on different projects with different versions of getText being tagged, then that should be a whole lot easier now. Just wanted to pass that along. And also there's some exciting stuff coming for the library. I think I might actually put the stuff into a new library though. I talked about it last week. It's all about agent frameworks and making it really easy to drop in a very complete agent in my Elixir application and just be able to go from there. Just really lowering the bar to say, hey, I want to be able to do all the cool stuff I see everyone else doing.
All right, next up, hologram creator and maintainer Bart Blast is requesting sponsorship for his continued development on hologram. We got a link to his social medias here, but just to give you a TLDR here is that after 3 years of building hologram full time, which I imagine that's a lot of work. And in case you don't know what hologram is, it does transpile pure Elixir into JavaScript, bringing it to the browser. And so he's at a crossroads now, and he's working 60 plus hours a week balancing contracts, and the dev just isn't really sustainable right now for him. So he's requesting a little bit of community help. Thought that is an ambitious project that seems very cool and very open to a lot of sweet opportunities here. writing your one language Elixir for both the back end and the front end, and it's isometric. So in the case that it transpiles some of that front end part into JavaScript, so that it just seems to work a little bit better for you. So we've got a link to where he's blogged about it, where he's seeking that sponsorship. So if this is something that's, you've got the budget for, love to, support some members of the community, definitely a big, ambitious project that I think could be really, really cool when it's nearing completion here. And he also has his GitHub sponsorship enabled on GitHub, so that's another avenue there. We've got links to all of this, but that is, Bart Blast looking for a little bit of sustainership, for some of his continued work. He has been in it for the long haul, so I think it's safe to say that given the financial stability, he would be able to complete it.
And last up, just shifting out of Elixir specific right now, we're going into web in general. Since most of us are developing web-based applications, this seemed really interesting and relevant. So what it is WebGPU is now supported in all major browsers. This was news to me, right? I'm not up on the latest of all these things like browser features or anything like that are coming. So just to understand what WebGPU is. So the WebGPU API enables web developers to use the underlying system's GPU to carry out high-performance computations and draw complex images that can be rendered in the browser. Previously, there was something called WebGL, which was like OpenGL, but for the web. So WebGPU is actually a successor to that, like replacing it, but it's going quite a bit further than what WebGL was ever doing before. So now we'll be able to provide better compatibility with modern GPUs, support for general purpose GPU computations, like general purpose, like not just graphics, right? That's where it's getting interesting. Faster operations and access to more advanced GPU features. So it is now currently supported in Chromium-based browsers, Firefox, and Safari. And we've got a link to it where they show the different browser versions. And this is like on handsets too, like on Androids and iPhones and stuff. So they made the point, though, that the WebGPU isn't just the replacement for WebGL. It's like a major leap forward. And what it does is it offers direct access to modern GPU features that were previously constrained by the older API. Its primary use cases are advanced 3D graphics and rendering, enabling richer, more realistic gaming experiences. So like that's where I think a lot of stuff could happen, right? You could end up playing, Fortnite in the browser, for instance. I don't know if that'll happen, but like this is the kind of thing you could start seeing. Then it also adds more complex data visualizations, enables that, and more sophisticated editing tools right in the browser. So imagine doing graphics or audio or video editing right in the browser, being able to use the GPU to make that more powerful. And it also unlocks GPU accelerated general purpose computation through its compute pipeline. And they make the point that this massively improves performance for tasks like machine learning inference and training. So you could actually run a workload of a large language model in the browser. You think back to like the Whisper model, right? The Whisper model is not very big, and that'll do audio transcription to text. So imagine having some of these smaller purpose-built large language models that could run in the browser. So they're now running locally on my hardware, right?
Yeah, Chrome has like Gemini Nano built into it now, I think, or something like that. But that's like a very browser-specific thing. That's only Chrome. And I don't know how they implemented it, but I assume that because they've built it into the browser, that it would have access to more hardware, such as your GPU, to actually perform the tasks. But that would only be for Gemini Nano. So I wonder if this opens it up for other bespoke, models, like you're saying, with like Whisper, that could be more web app controlled. That would be really interesting. The HBO series of Silicon Valley has ruined me, but the Pied Piper thing, where they basically just distribute storage across everyone's phones, just keeps on coming back up. So this is where so now I'm just thinking of like, imagine Claude Code, Anthropic APIs just now being distributed across everyone's computers via their browsers versus huge data centers, which could be really interesting future. Anyway, I wonder if that's what web GPU kind of opens up a possibility for is those bespoke LLMs that can be web app controlled versus Chrome browser controlled.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. They say that this could also be used for video processing, physics simulations, and a lot of the stuff that you previously would have to go to a desktop application in order to do. That now you're able to do those more intensive applications on the web. So it really is the case where the browser becomes the OS, and you might be running AAA game titles in a browser at some point in the future, right? So it's interesting. This impacts us on the web just because you're probably going to have some C-suite executive come over and say, hey, we want to do this. We want to do GPUs in the browser. So now you'll at least have heard that this is now a thing.
Very cool.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.